going on, everybody? This is the Trophy Hunters podcast featuring the Four Wide podcast. It's our second episode of our little crossover move show we've been doing. Fellas, we are, I had to count, had to use my hand there, 5 days away, less than 5 days away now, from the Daytona 500. First up, Ryan, how's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I am super excited. Yeah, I mean, it's qualifying tomorrow, duels on Thursday, race on Sunday. It is full speed ahead. It is an exciting week for NASCAR fans.
He is the host of the Take One podcast and the co-host, of the Four Wide podcast. He's Mr. Mike Busch. What's going on, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. Super excited to be back with you guys. I can't believe NASCAR season is already here. Like, that shit is just absolutely crazy to me, and we got a full week ahead. I mean, started off great with the Clash. Already got some steam and some rivalries going on and heated back up. So going to the Daytona 500 with some excitement. So really looking forward to it, man. Excited to be here.
And also joining us, his co-host, Cody. What's going on, dude?
What's going on, fellas? It's the best time of the year. I'm gonna go to bed on Saturday night, wake up Sunday, and think it's Christmas Day because the Daytona 500 is here. The 2023 season is about to start. I'm ready.
Awesome. Good shit. So this wasn't on the show notes. Our friend Mondo, who's in this NASCAR GM fantasy pool we're doing, sent us an entry list a few days ago that had Guns N' Roses listed as the sponsor of Eric Jones' Legacy Motor Club Chevy Camaro, and I have it right there. It's not a very good shot of it, but it was Jimmy Johnson's tweet. Who he tweeted out his first concert was Guns N' Roses in San Diego Stadium. Jack Murphy, I have no idea who that is. Apologies. 1992. I promise you, my 17-year-old self did not see this coming. I know Axl Rose is a huge race fan, all sorts of racing. Never in my wildest dreams did I think the band would shell out money to sponsor a car for the Daytona 500. That's it's not a cheap bill to pay. Thoughts on the car, fellas, and the partnership? Will we see more things like this moving forward? Because this is kind of I won't call it a new direction, but if you go back to like the mid 90s, Kyle Petty was like running an NWO car, and there was some WWF cars and some other rock band cars. Cartoon Network had a car. Are we starting to see other sponsors either return to the sport or new sponsors come into the sport finally? Anybody take it?
You know, I think this is an interesting case. I appreciate Guns N' Roses stepping up to the plate to put their name on the side of the car. And while I know this is their first foray into sponsorship, I'm pretty sure we saw a Kiss car or another, rock jam, car in the past. So we've definitely seen musical acts. Florida Georgia Line, I think, was on a car a few years ago. So it's not the first time we've seen music, artists on race cars. So I could definitely see more of, and I definitely think there's a new model of sponsorship that's really kind of rolling out where, obviously we've seen it to some extent with teams having 8 to 10 sponsors on a car. And this is just one of those situations where, you might get more one-off specialized sponsorships. So I don't know if it's going to be a new foray into a new genre of sponsorship types, but it's definitely something with the new car, with the new business model, with the new industry, I guess, direction that we're going to see more and more of this in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. Ryan took the words out of my mouth. You look back in maybe the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, when we saw most drivers have one, maybe two primary sponsors. And now you fast forward 2 decades later and you're seeing teams having 8 or 9 sponsors. Shout out to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So I feel like you're going to start seeing something like this. I know that we've seen in the past, like where colleges will be on or be a sponsor on some cars. So I'm thinking, depending on what track you're going to, there are going to be some hometown sponsorship that tries to get on for a race.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think we'll see those certain races that'll pop up. Cody talked about colleges. I mean, there's one primary. I don't know if it's still one of his primaries or major ones, but I know William Byron had Liberty University for a while. Not sure if he still has that, but I think that we can definitely see a lot more of that happening. And it's exciting, man. I think that scheme that you just had up, the Guns N' Roses scheme, I thought was really clean, really slick. I always like a clean black car with yellow, orange, black. Just kind of makes everything for the most part pop in a sense, whatever that color is adjacent of it. So really good look, really clean look. I like the little roses at the bottom. By the 4 and the 3. So I really like it, man. So I hope we see more of it in the future for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to it. I think it's a great look for Eric Jones. I feel like now that Kurt Busch has kind of stepped aside and he's kind of no longer in the racing full time, there needs to be a new outlaw, somebody new that step up to the plate. And Eric Jones just has always had that aura to me as kind of that mysterious man in black, and this look really hits home on that. So I really like seeing that look specifically to Eric Jones. There are some drivers that this car would not work well with. I think it works well with him. And then just to that, this 43 car is probably going to be sponsored by about 12 different organizations this year as they kind of find sponsorship as they go, since they lost their primary so late in the game going into the 2023 season.
Yeah, it's still tragic. That was that's hard. That's a tough pill to swallow. You get Jimmy Johnson come in to be a minority owner, and obviously it attracts investors to the team. And then all of a sudden, the sponsor that had signed up to do either 24 or 26 races for not only this year, but next year as well, is just gone like that. That's not an Xfinity schedule you're trying to fill. That's not a Truck Series schedule you're trying to fill. That's a $20+ million sponsorship gone. So you're going to see everything on that car, I would imagine. Who is it that owns that team again? He owns a chain of hotels.
Maury Gallagher. He owns the airline, Allegiant Airline.
Hotels. I don't know where I got that. There's hotels at airlines. I'm going to call it a win. So yeah, I'm digging it. Let me ask you guys though. I feel like I heard you guys talk about this on your show not too long ago. Do you guys dig the different sponsors? Like I know when we were kids, you'd see Rusty Wallace out there, and 90% of the year you knew he was in some sort of Miller car. It looked the same most of the time. I still prefer to see like a majority sponsor on the car, but it doesn't need to be 28 races. Give me that sponsor for half the season and then fill the other half with one-offs and 2 races. I like the different cars. I like the paint schemes. You can sell more merchandise that way too. And I think as a business model, they're almost forced to do this now. I can't think of 4 or 5 drivers that have the same sponsor on their car in the Cup Series anymore for more than 20 to 24 races.
Yeah, I'm me personally, I guess it's just me wanting that nostalgia feel. I kind of wish that the majority of the drivers only had 2, maybe 3 sponsors all season. Like you said, there definitely are, a handful of drivers that have, like a Joey Logano, a Denny Hamlin. They had their sponsors for, a good probably 3/4 of the season. But you have some drivers that have, it almost seems like a different looking car every single week. And it just kind of throws it off a little bit, So me personally, I mean, I think it's cool business model. This is kind of what they have to do. But I do wish that it could get back to only having 2 primary sponsors throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree with Cody. I'm around that 2 or 3 mark as well. And listen, I like the different paint schemes that you brought up, Sean. For Chase Elliott, I'm not a big fan of his Napa one, which is his primary one. I love his Hooter scheme. So that's my favorite one that he runs. So I would love to see that more. But I do love the variety of the different sponsors and the different paint schemes and the different merchandise as well. But for me personally, man, I would just love to go back to maybe that 1 to 2, pushing maybe 3.
For me personally, I also like the smaller amount of sponsors for multitudes of reasons. And not just the amount of sponsors, the kind of sponsor that's on the car. Back in the day, or hell, even 5 to 10 years ago, a lot of the sponsors you saw in the cars were consumable products. Whether it's Kyle Busch with M&Ms or Tony Stewart with Old Spice or Office Depot, tangible places that you could go and buy something and support the race team. In today's world, we're seeing a lot of business to business operations with companies that, frankly, none of us have ever heard of. I mean, they're technology companies, they're cloud-based companies, they're pharmaceutical companies. And to me, that is harder to relate to than a company that I can go and buy a product from. And that's a big part of it for me. So I like seeing the fewer, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 is fine, more so than the 8 or 9. But really, it's who's sponsoring the car. And then just the other side of it, my wife is a very casual fan. I've kind of got her into racing. She just watches it with me most Sundays. And when she's looking out on the cars, she needs a car that's familiar. So when one week Austin Dillon's in a bright mint green car, and then the next week he's in a black car, she doesn't know who Austin Dillon is anymore when she's looking at the grid. So while it might not necessarily affect this group, there's a lot of casual fans that it would struggle with that many sponsors on the cars.
Yeah, until you get more teams willing to do what Rick Hendrick or Matt Kaulig does. Like Penske used to do it a lot back in the day. I don't see him do it as much, where they just self-sponsor the car for races. I think you're going to run into that problem because I don't see it ever returning to the way it used to be. I'd like it to as well, maybe not as stingy as it was on different paint schemes back in the late 90s, but I don't see that business model working anymore, not with how much everything costs.
Can I ask one question real quick? What are y'all's thoughts when it comes to sponsorship being shared? Right? Like you look at Austin Dillon, he has Bass Pro, and then you look at Martin Truex Jr., also has Bass Pro. You look at this year Monster being on Ty Gibbs, but also being on Tyler Reddick. Do y'all have any thoughts on that with kind of sharing sponsorship?
I don't mind it. And that's something we saw specifically this year, or I'm sorry, last year, where, RFK in particular would run the same sponsor on both cars on the same weekend. And it took a little getting used to, but honestly, if you look at other forms of motorsports, that's a pretty common occurrence. So to me, it's not that big of a deal. But I will say this, and this is just something that I reached out to Sean on earlier today. I saw Andy's Frozen Custard on the side of Austin Dillon, and I was like, hey, man, I saw that sponsor on AJ's car last year. What's going on? Did RCR step in and take a sponsor? But, as he pointed out, they've actually been sponsoring both drivers for a couple of years now. So, again, that adds some confusion when it's cross-platforming amongst different race teams, but when the same race team runs the same paint scheme, I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, I don't really mind it either. Just as long as it's not the same race. I don't know. I think it's in the Xfinity series where we saw two cars run the Monster Energy, the same Monster Energy paint scheme. You're muted, Sean.
No, I just haven't said anything. Larson and
I think it was Byron.
The Hendrick cars at Watkins Glen for Xfinity.
Or no, maybe that was Chase. One of the two. Yeah, that is very weird. I agree with you, Mike.
Yeah, as long as it's not like that, I'm perfectly fine with it. It's kind of confusing. So, if we can steer away from that, I don't mind the whole sharing sponsors.
Yeah, I know the one case. I think it was Pocono last year where Mobil One sponsored 4 Stewart Haas cars in the same weekend. That was too much. I didn't like that.
Definitely.
So let me ask you guys this. We have playoff drivers to do, championship picks to do. I want to know who you guys think who's on the hot seat this year. Who do you predict? Alex Bowman, Anyway, who do you predict is going to have not that we want to put negative energy out there, but who's going to drop the ball this year? Who do you think's lined up to have a not good season? And before everybody rushes out and says one of the back of the pack guys, let's leave them off to the side.
I honestly, me and Mike talked about this yesterday. As a whole, we both kind of agreed that like we can see Trackhouse kind of taking a little step back, maybe because the competition has been able to kind of figure out the car a little more moving forward. I can see Daniel Suarez, unfortunately, kind of taking a step back in 2023. And I know you said be on the hot seat. I don't think that he would be on the hot seat, but I can see him going winless in a sophomore year with Trackhouse where they had so much success in that first year.
I think he's good at that dirt track, so I think he has a shot at Bristol. And he's always good at the road courses, but I wouldn't put him top 3 or 4 there. So you take my guy, and then you got to slam my replacement guy. Unbelievable.
I think for me, Cody brought up Trackhouse. For some reason, man, I think William Byron goes winless this year. I think he takes a step back this year. I know Cody doesn't agree with that, but I just don't think he has a good year this year, or for whatever reason. So I need to see a little bit more consistency out of the 24 car, honestly.
You really do hate all Hendrick drivers on the channel. Wow. Okay.
I like Kyle Larson when he's not wrecking his teammates.
Okay.
I seem to recall you
There it is.
After the Glen. Oh boy. For me, I have a bit of a cheat answer. I have an entire team, and my team is Stuart Haas. I think they're lined up for a not so good year at all. You have Ryan Preece, and with all due respect to the fella who definitely was turning some heads at the football stadium track there, he has never done a damn thing. He never deserved to fucking kick AJ out of that ride to begin with in the 47 car. So yes, there's a bit of bitterness there for sure. Not that I ever wanted him in that ride to begin with. But I don't know. He's just one of those drivers who, like, what did he even do in Xfinity, guys? Can anybody tell me what Ryan Preece has done in Xfinity? I can't. He raced a handful of races, ran good, but I don't recall wins. If so, I didn't watch those races. I just don't see anything there. I think it's a bad change, to be honest. Kevin Harvick was off the face of the planet until he won a race last year. So I don't see that getting much better. And Eric Almirola, who runs Smithfield? Like, seriously. I'm sure someone else could use that support. But Briscoe, I'm pretty high on. I think he's the guy that's going to be really good for them and make the playoffs and go somewhere. But the other three,
So I'm on the exact opposite end of where you're at there, Sean. My driver that I think is in fact Chase Briscoe. I think he comes back to earth a little bit. He had a great playoff run last year. I'm not taking that away from him. He got hot, and he definitely earned his final 8 and almost snuck into the championship 4. But during the course of the regular season, he was a no-show. Had he not won that race at Phoenix, he wasn't going to make the playoffs. So to me, I think Chase Briscoe is a bit overhyped, and Stuart Haas as an organization is kind of at a weaker point. I agree with that whole assessment that the entire team's probably not going to perform to the standard. And now, I mean, they've struggled a few years now, so it's not as surprising. But I think we at one point considered them a top 3 organization, and they've definitely fallen back from that. Ryan Preece, I listen, he's had a weird career. He did win for Joe Gibbs Racing. I think he has 3 or 4 Xfinity wins for Joe Gibbs Racing, but he's never really strung a full season together in trucks or Xfinity. He just kind of nomaded his way into the Cup Series. So I have no idea what to expect from him. But as a whole, I think Chase Briscoe if he does not get an early season win, I could see him missing the playoffs altogether. But on the flip side of that, knowing that this is Harvick's last year, I think he started to figure that car out a little bit towards the end of the year last year. I mean, he got really unlucky to miss or not to advance out of the round of 16. I think he has a really good year and goes out swinging.
Mike, did you have another one, or did you and Cody just have the same one? Oh, sorry, no, you had one. My apologies. Yeah, I don't know. Also, shout out to Tony Stewart, by the way. I don't know if you guys read the news, but that dude's going top fuel dragster racing all season long in the NHRA. And by the way, I'm not trying to put anything bad into the universe, but as a guy who grew up on NHRA before NASCAR, haven't watched in like 15 years, but that shit is dangerous as hell. You want to talk dangerous? That shit is about as dangerous as it gets. So
yeah,
I hope he really loves what he's doing. I would have went for like pro stock or something, a little safer.
I mean, that man is busier now more than he was during his Cup career. He's on the go, so good for him.
Who's the surprise driver for you guys for this year? Who do you have as the guy to sort of raise eyeballs, if you will, or eyeballs?
So I'll go first since I went last on the last one. I have Brad Keselowski stepping back up this year. I really like the direction that RFK took throughout the course of the year. I mean, we saw what Chris Buescher was able to do. He got that win at Bristol, had some awesome runs at the road courses. I really think Brad has elevated that organization. And he was a bit of a no-show last year, by far his worst season as a professional driver. I think he turns that around this year. I think he gets a win and makes playoffs and really brings that organization back to the forefront. Will they compete for a championship? I don't think so. He might be out in the round of 16 even, but compared to where he was last year, I think he takes the biggest jump forward this year.
I think for me, I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. Obviously, he struggled tremendously last year, and it was something that we just really were not used to seeing from him ever since he's been with Joe Gibbs. He's won races. He's been very dominant, and I just think that he gets back to that. I mean, he's had a rough off season personally, and then really just a rough year last year. You know, we all thought that win was going to come, and it never did. But I definitely think that he takes a step up this year. I think that he balls out. And I think that everybody on that Joe Gibbs team has a really, really good year this year. So for me, I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr. getting back in the win column multiple times.
So I know that this isn't going to raise the eyebrows of two people on here, but I'm going to say Mr. AJ Allmendinger. I know that he did very well in the Xfinity season or series for the past, few years. And a lot of people might have their reservations on him going to the Cup Series, different car, maybe it's going to take a little more learning. But we saw that team get stronger and stronger as the year was going on last season. And I just kind of feel like that momentum is going to keep going for all the drivers, but especially AJ Allmendinger. I know that y'all don't like to hear, oh, well, he's just a road course racer. He's going to get a couple wins there. That's what's going to get him into the playoffs. But look, if it works for you, it works for you. I think he's going to be good on a lot of the ovals as well. But his bread and butter is going to be those road courses that I think is going to clinch him a playoff spot. And then when he makes it into the playoffs, he's going to be able to showcase his skills even more on those ovals. I honestly think, just a hot prediction right here, I know we talked about it a little bit before the show, but I think AJ Allmendinger makes it to the round of 8 when it's all said and done.
Wow. That's something. I was so skeptical to pick Allmendinger or anyone related to Kaulig because of the point that you guys just brought up a little while ago. How much did the bigger teams gain during the off season? But then you got to step back and go, how much ability was there to gain during the off season when you're still using spec parts? Sounds like they're going to continue to use spec parts and they're not going anywhere. And they didn't even have possession of some of those parts right away because of the adjustments being made to the car. So it's like, Was there a chance for the bigger teams to gain as much as they normally would a few years ago? I don't think so. So with that said, I'm not going AJ Allmendinger. I'm going Justin Haley. And I actually am putting this one out there. Justin Haley is my Daytona 500 pick.
Wow.
At least I really, really hope, because I really do.
Man, I see you didn't wait long enough after work to hit the blunt tonight. my God.
What hasn't happened yet?
I am literally speechless. I can't believe that's what just came out of your mouth. And I'll tell you, for me, this is an interesting.
I mean, I know he's a good road racer too, but what's his special?
He is great at super speedways. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, if he's going to win one, it's probably going to be at a super speedway. And we saw last year with Austin Cindric. I mean, a rookie can do it, right? So, I mean, no question, Justin Haley can't do it. But that's a bold prediction. And I will say this. I mean, you guys can see my virtual background. I got Kaulig Racing, posted up behind me here. So, but I'm a little skittish to grease the wheels because I know I'm so invested in the Kaulig Racing brand, trying to show some impartiality here with how I feel about the season. I definitely agree. I think Justin Haley is a great surprise pick. I think the Daytona 500, that is indeed very bold. And I tell you, I just kind of go and talking about AJ a little bit. I do think the bigger organizations will step up. I think we saw a very small tidbit of that with how good the Toyotas were at the Clash. With that race last year, most of them didn't even make the main event, and they jumped to the top of the board. They're the best cars. So right. I have
best car by a very small margin. Like they were going on. Who was it that was doing an interview? They were interviewing the guy as people were doing practice laps, and might have been Chase Elliott actually. And he's like standing by the track, and I'm like watching the cars whip by him, thinking it's not a very safe place to stand for an interview. But he'd mentioned there's still like almost no separation from the guy in first and the guy at the back of the pack. Now, in a long run, sure, someone's going to start to pull away, but in those short runs, I didn't find the Toyotas were any more dominant on that short run than the other cars that were there. But once they got 15, 20 laps, chance to get out there, they were the better car, but there's still a complete lack of separation, even going back to the final race last year in the championship race, where you have the guy who is sitting on the pole, or more importantly, fuck the pole time. The average lap time during a race under green is like what? 0.2 faster than the guy in friggin' 26th. That's not much. That's not much at all.
Well, that's the good and the bad, right? I mean, if you're on the good side of those 0.2, you're going to be really hard to pass. If you're on the bad side of those 0.2, let's use Kaulig as an example. They might have been in the middle last year. They were 1/10 off the lead, and they're running 10th to 15th. But if they lost just a 10th of a second, now they're running 25th. And if that's all it takes, if the big organizations can find a single 10th, now all of a sudden they're going to be at the top of the board. And I guess, for me personally, this is as an AJ Allmendinger fan, I'm so used to the bad things that have happened. I mean, whether it's been, obviously we know what happened at Penske, but at, Richard Petty Motorsports or even JTG, I guess I don't have the confidence to sit here and say that his equipment's good enough to win, even though it very well could be. So I personally want to, that's the jaded side of my personal opinion on it. So we'll see. Let's see what we look like in 5 to 10 races if these smaller teams, a Kaulig, an RFK, even a legacy motor club, how they're running stacked to the big teams, and then we'll have a better idea if they're in fact going to be able to maintain kind of what we saw last year.
I'm curious if the guy above you right now who predicted, I think it was 19 or 20 people to win last night, agrees with you or not, because by that prediction, I would say he doesn't.
Listen, man, this season, when I picked my 16 drivers to make it to the playoffs, right? Like I said it yesterday, it's like at first I had 20 guys on there, and it's like obviously you have to cut that list down to 16, and it's just hard to do because you see these drivers, you're like, oh no, he's gonna get a win. No, he's gonna get a win. I don't know. I know that we talked about like did these higher organizations, did they get better over the offseason? We don't know. The jury's still out on that. But I really feel like we're gonna have somewhat of a duplicate season like we did last year, where we had so many winners, man. And you got to think about it, right? Like it seems like NASCAR has continued over the past few years to kind of broaden the tracks that we go to, right? Like, we don't have 3/4 of the schedule is just mile and a halves anymore. We have a lot more road courses. They're adding in, obviously, the street course. It's just they have all these different types of tracks that I believe plays into certain drivers' hands. That's why we are getting all these different winners, and I don't see it stopping in 2023.
I agree.
I disagree.
I agree as well.
Oh,
I disagree.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that we have, what was it? What was the over under last night, Cody, for us?
18 and a half.
Yeah, I think we're under that. I do think that we get some of the bigger teams. They do find that edge to push forward, and that we're not. It's just not gonna be a repeat season, in my opinion. I don't see that many people winning. I just don't. And I mean, I do agree with Cody. It was kind of hard to make the list, so that's a good way to look at it. To where it's like there are about 20 drivers you could see winning, but for some reason, I just have a feeling that I feel like one of these drivers on these big teams, like I can see Denny Hamlin winning about 5 to 6 races this year. I can see a Chase Elliott winning 4, or a Larson winning 4, or I just see that happening this year, and I think we get it. I think we get it. I think we stay under 18 this year.
How many winners did we have in 2022?
19.
We had 19 winners, right? So, all right. So hear me out. 19 winners. And this list does not include Martin Truex Jr., doesn't include Ryan Blaney. It doesn't include AJ Allmendinger, right? Like, I mean, those are 3 guys right off the top. It doesn't include a Brad Keselowski, who's now in his 2nd year with this team, who came on late in the season. That's 4 drivers off the top of your head that we're saying we could go from 19 winners to 23 winners, right? I don't know, man. I don't think that these teams have that much information in regards to this car to separate themselves that far apart. That's why I'm comfortable with saying over 18 and a half. I think we're going to get to 20.
And see, I just think there's drivers that won last year that I don't think are going to win this year. I don't think Austin Cindric is going to get a win this year. Like I'm not confident in saying that. I think Sean, you were high on him. You think he's going to have a really good season this year?
I think
I'm not.
Out of AJ Allmendinger and Chase Elliott, he's probably the next best road racer in the sport. And by the way, one of the
Kyle Larson's pretty good.
Thank you.
I believe Cindric has street course.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
As
That's
does
true.
Allmendinger and Jimmy Johnson.
Well,
Yeah, I
the
don't know,
interesting thing, though, with Cindric is we know how good of a road course racer he is. Frankly, we know how good Chase Briscoe is at road courses because he kicked the ass out of everyone in the Xfinity Series a few years ago. But both Briscoe and Cindric did not perform well at any of the road courses last year.
Shocking. In my opinion.
Now, by bad, I mean, we're talking lower than expectation. I think they've had plenty of top 10s, but they weren't at the front of the field. So it's really hard to say where they end up. Me personally, I'm kind of on the train with Mike a little bit. I think the number is definitely going to be under 19, but I still think it's going to be a decent amount. I'm going to say 14 to 15 different winners. But what I expect to see are more teams winning 4 to 5 races. We had a huge cluster of drivers that were kind of in a 2-win situation last year that are too talented to win 2. They should probably win 4 or 5. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see in terms of separation is maybe a half dozen drivers jump from 1 or 2 wins to 3 or 4 or 5 wins, and that's definitely going to take some W's away from some of the smaller guys.
How many wins did Kyle Larson have last year?
3, because he got that last
3.
one at Homestead in the playoffs.
3? Okay. For some reason, I was thinking too. Like that's another guy I feel like could win easily 4 or 5 races this year. I don't know. Just And to Cody's point, Martin Truex Jr. And I said it. I think he's going to win a couple races this year as well. But again, also processed by elimination as well. You have some that I think didn't win last year that are going to win this year, but ones that won last year that aren't going to win this year. Yeah. So it just all depends. And then you're going to have those drivers that, like a Justin Haley, that's going to probably pull off a win, a driver that we just don't see, or like a Chris Buescher. He's usually good for a win. Yeah, you just never know. Yeah.
Can I say this on the Chris Buescher front? I know you guys have been bringing up Keselowski, who I think is absolutely fucking washed. Sorry, I do. And it wasn't just like this year at friggin' or this past season at RFK. It was what was going on at Penske at the end that had me going, yeah. But Chris Buescher, holy crap, was this guy all over the place the back half of last season. Like that 17 car was popping up everywhere.
And I need him to do it for me again this year, baby. I need it.
That's the guy who I think is going to be someone to watch. I have him in the playoffs, so.
That's the hard part. I don't, but he very easily could be. That's what makes this season. I think I know if we had this year, we'd probably be saying about like who the hell's going to perform. But I think it's harder to pick this year than last year because the parity is very real, and I don't think the parity is going to go away. I just think we're going to see the cream of the crop separate just a little bit more.
Yeah, and then there's arguments to both sides because listening to Cody and Sean, like now, I'm not saying I'm rethinking, I'm sticking to what I'm saying, but like valid points were made. Like there's guys that won last year, maybe one race, or guys that were very close to winning that I think are going to step up and perform really good this year. So I don't know, man. We'll see. It's super exciting. Yeah.
I will say this.
I love this format, by the way. I love this format.
I will say this. A driver that I'm going to say is going to go from 0 wins to 4 wins this season is Ryan Blaney. That guy should have won so many races last year, and he's really going to figure it out, and he's going to get those W's this year.
So I just want to backtrack here for a second. When I was bringing up the whole parity thing, I wasn't implying that Allmendinger's going to go out there and win 5 races and Haley's going to go out there and win 5 races. Frankly, their best chance to win anything are at a road course or a super speedway. I didn't think AJ would be battling for second place on the last lap of Homestead and running top 5 all day. But he did that at multiple 1.5-mile tracks last year. My point is the gap between being able to run 20th and run 7th is smaller than it has ever been in the history of the sport, in my opinion. And that's what makes it competitive.
Well, that's not an opinion. That's facts.
Yeah.
You're spitting facts right now. So
I don't have these numbers in front of me, and I wish I did. But just going off exactly what you just said, Sean, where are you going to find opportunities to make passes and run up front? Usually after a restart, right? That's when everybody's bunched up. You're going to be able to make. So when you want to look at a driver that, with all things being equal, and there are opportunities to take a 15th place car and turn it into a top 10 car, or a top 10 car and turn it into a top 5 car, is how a driver does on restarts. Yeah. And I can tell you with the fact that AJ Allmendinger is one of the top 10 best restart drivers in NASCAR. So when you're talking of, you don't necessarily have to even have a great car per se, because once you have track position with all the speeds being what they are, which is virtually equal, if you can get a good restart, if you can gain 3 or 4 or 5 spots on a restart, you can really make some hay and make something that might not normally be there.
So I also want to just say that I think there'll be 13 winners prior to the playoffs. I'm not saying there'll be 13 period. There could be 16 or 17 winners in total, but I think 13 different people will win, and you'll have this intense 3-way battle, or this intense battle for 3 positions on points, I think, towards the end. And I think that'll be a real close battle, because if you do have 2 or even 3 spots up for points, I think that 14 through 20 is going to be so tight up to the last couple of races, to the point where like you'll be watching different battles all night long. Is Bristol the last race again?
Last race of what, the regular season?
Yeah.
It's I thought it was Daytona.
Oh yeah, it is Daytona. Isn't it?
Yeah,
you're right. And then Bristol's the first race of the playoffs, right?
I think it's the second race. Darlington is the first race of the playoffs.
Right. Yep, you're right.
All right, I have to say this. All right,
Nah.
because what'd you say, Mike?
Go ahead.
All right.
Know where this is going.
Yeah, Ryan, I have to respectfully I don't agree with what you said about Ryan Blaney. Listen, Ryan Blaney, to me, him and Alex Bowman remind me so much of one another.
I'm gonna go ahead and stop Cody. Basically, I'm gonna sum this up. Cody thinks he's gonna go winless and get kicked off of Penske.
Okay. I did not say that. Listen, Ryan Blaney has been a full-time driver for Penske for 5 years. With Penske, he has 6 career wins. All right. Like, I get your point. Like, there were definitely some races that, it looks like he should have won last year and he didn't. But that's the whole point, right? It's like, listen, you need to show me you can win those races you're supposed to and even get some wins that you're not supposed to. And we have not seen that from Ryan Blaney. And in his 5 years with Penske, he only has one season where he has multiple wins. Until I see it from Ryan Blaney, I'm gonna have to disagree, man. He has not really proven that much to me.
So I'm kind of in the middle between y'all two. I think Ryan Blaney gets 1 win this year. I picked him to win at Atlanta. 4 is that's a big stretch, my guy. And I'm a big Ryan Blaney fan, but that's a big jump. That's a big jump. Look, I hope you're right. But man, that's tough. That's tough.
So, and what I'm about to say, there is zero evidence-based proof of what I'm about to say. It's all anecdotal. But when you look at Penske Racing, that organization, year in and year out, performs and wins. There is a level of inconsistency with who wins for that organization. And I'm a huge Joey Logano fan. I have been for years. But if you look at his record, he's an every other year kind of driver. I don't expect him to have a super dominant year this year. And he will win 1 or 2 races. He'll make the playoffs. He might even make the Final Four again. But he's not going to win as many races this year that he did last year. And I don't have any confidence that Austin Cindric's going to do anything. You want to talk about a driver that's going to get kicked out? If he wasn't family, he's probably going to be out the door. I don't think he's going to be that good. So who's left to step up for Penske? And in my eyes, that's going to be Ryan Blaney. I think they're going to invest money and resources to make that car the best car in the stable. And I think that's going to show out in wins.
Hi.
Let's get to our playoff drivers, guys. I'll kick things off. This is who I have in. I don't have who makes each round. Just these are my 16 guys. Larson, Elliott, Mike's favorite, Alex Bowman, Byron, Hamlin, Bell, Gibbs, Allmendinger, Blaney, Logano, Reddick, Busch, Haley, Chastain, Suarez, and Buescher. So I have no Truex, and I have 3/4 of Stewart Haas out.
Dumb. Oh shit! I wasn't muted.
No.
Oh,
so
it's okay. I'm gonna get some pushback when it comes to my championship picks.
Bowman's going to win more races than Martin Truex this year.
Man,
them are fighting words.
He better if he wants a contract.
Well, he better hope there's only 3 different winners, period, if he wants to keep his job, according to Mike. So,
I mean, and that's pushing it, to be quite honest with you. But Cody, floor's yours, my guy.
So these are my 16. I have Ross Chastain, Austin Dillon. Yes, I have Austin Dillon in there, maybe because he's on my fantasy GM team. I don't know. We'll see. Kevin Harvick last year. I think that I forgot which one of y'all said it. I think it was you, Ryan. It's his last year. He's not here to make friends. He's going to do what he has to do to make it to the playoffs, in my opinion. Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Mr. Washed Up himself, according to Sean. Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, AJ Allmendinger, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick. Those are my 16 drivers to make the playoffs.
All right, I'm gonna go. All right, so because I think the narrative, and I'm gonna start out strong on this one. Alex Bowman is making the playoffs. Okay, I just want to get that out of there because it seems like to be a fucking narrative around here that I hate the guy, and that's not the truth. That is just not true. Okay, so my first driver to make the playoff is Alex Bowman. First place, probably not, probably 16th. But all right, Ross Chastain, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, jeez, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Cody's favorite, Ryan Blaney, AJ Allmendinger, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, and, of course, Alex Bowman.
Bowman's picked twice. He's that good.
He's so good, he gets in twice. That's right.
Well, his
alter ego is going to win one in the night ally car as well.
Bowman's going to win the championship, and Mike's going to be like, you should have won Phoenix in more dominating fashion. You're out of here.
Oh, if he wins the championship and only gets 1 win, 2 wins, not
wins
getting
the championship
not
and doesn't win at all.
Not good enough.
There it is.
Not
That's how
good enough.
He's going to do it without a win. He's going to pull a Matt Kenseth, and Mike's head's going to explode.
I don't hate that. Oh, man, whatever. Man, go, man, go.
All right. Honestly, it seems like we're all pretty much on the same page. There's very small variance in who we're picking here. And Cody and I are pretty damn close. So my drivers are Ross Chastain, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, AJ Allmendinger, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Eric Jones, and Tyler Reddick.
Yeah. Let's go Eric Jones, baby. I love that pick.
And
I love
Alex
that pick.
Bowman does not make the playoffs.
Fucking hater.
How many drivers was that? I swear I counted 17 drivers.
No, hell, let me do a quick count.
He did bid on like 40 guys after all. So
he had the whole stable of NASCAR.
I had 16 in there this time, I swear.
Okay.
We're going to talk on the fantasy stuff, right, Sean?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. No,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me.
So, no Alex Bowman. I actually do think he does not win. He has an inconsistent year and will be fired. He will not be part of Hendrick Motorsports in 2024.
No, not fired.
Fired.
Jesus.
Fired.
Oh,
Kick
my
to the
God.
curb.
Oh, man. Check this
He
out.
won't even make it to Phoenix.
Alex Bowman's getting fired. Ryan Blaney's getting fired. Like, this is ridiculous. This is a hell of a show. I'll tell you what.
My God.
See, there's a selfish reason behind me. Sorry. There's a selfish reason of that because I want Alex Bowman to sign with Kaulig Racing for 2024.
That's exactly where I think he's going. I think he's going to sign there, and then that car is eventually going to become Chandler Smith's car. If you noticed, if you look at what Kaulig did today, they shifted a lot of their stuff over to 3 Cup cars. 2 Cup cars.
You said Alex Bowman to Kaulig Racing?
But I'm going to go to the 4.
Oh, we'll talk about putting.
Oh, well, if that's
Man,
if that's an option, he might be more interested in going there then for sure.
He'd probably go to the 4 if he comes to. I mean, you don't want him coming to Kaulig because then you'll just turn to shit. Quite honestly, I will make a promise though. I'm going to make a promise. Okay, if Ryan Blaney comes back to do signings at Kroger this year, I'm going to FaceTime Cody. And I'm going to be like, Cody, didn't you say Ryan Blaney was getting released from Penske this year?
I'm blocking your number right now so that doesn't happen.
Oh, man. Just hostile, man. Hostile. Who are our championship picks? You get 2 of them. 2 of them. I'm generous. 2 of them. We'll go around the table, Mike.
Oh, yes. That's who I want you to start with.
So my number 1 pick is probably going to make everybody leave. And I'm going to go with Kyle Busch winning the championship this year. I know that I know Cody thinks he's going to go through a real hard learning curve, and he might. I mean, we talked about. I think me and you talked about maybe Tyler Reddick going through the same learning curve as well over at 2311. But I honestly have a lot of faith in Kyle Busch, man. I think that he had a lot on his plate last year, a lot on his mind, and he was just racing he was just making mistakes that just never made sense. Like, this guy was just spinning in the back of the field on his own, and that's just not the Kyle Busch that I grew up with, that I know. And if he has a similar season, whether it's struggling on a new team or not, I said this the other night, if he has a similar season to what he did last year, we could possibly be seeing the end of Kyle Busch, in my opinion. I mean, because that's just very uncharacteristic from him. He doesn't have to go out there and dominate, but I mean, to run into the back of the field and wreck like so many races last year, just, I don't know, it was just so weird to see last year. So he is my first main pick. And then number 2, I'm going to have to go with Denny Hamlin, which it's shocking because he just can't finish. But I do think he's going to win the most races this year in the Cup Series. So I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin as my second driver.
Cody?
Really? That's it? No pushback on Kyle? Nice. Okay. Wow.
So I honestly, my first pick, I think this man goes back to back. I'm going number 22, Joey Logano. I just feel like Joey Logano has. Darn, Sean, why are you looking like that, man? Like, God.
Did you not listen to the numbers? Did you not listen to what I said? This man is an every other year man. He's going to not do shit this year.
All right. I hear y'all. But Ryan Blaney is. Anyway, so
Mr. Two-Faced himself.
Look, I think Joey Logano is going to do it, man. The past couple seasons, I've just seen a different side of Joey Logano where he just doesn't care. Right, like he's there for one reason, and that's to win races and win championships. He doesn't care whose feathers he ruffles, none of that. And I love that because early on in his career, Joey Logano kind of seemed like a pushover, right? Like a Mr. Nice Guy. He's flipped the script, in my opinion. I feel like he's going to be able to win 3 to 4 races this year, and I think that he is going to be hoisting that trophy at Phoenix. But my second driver is the guy that I won in the fantasy GM, Mr. number 45, Tyler Reddick. All right. I think that I said it yesterday. We all agree he outperformed his equipment at RCR last year for sure. I understand going to a new team, it could definitely be some learning curves, like I believe is going to happen to Kyle Busch, but I believe 2311 is a better team than RCR. And I think he's just going to be able to jump into that seat and he's going to be able to put it together consistently because there were a lot of races that he left out there that he should have won that he didn't last year. I think he's going to be able to put it all together consistently in 2023. And I will put him as the runner up in 2023.
I mean, honestly, I don't think either driver struggles this year. I think Tyler Reddick and Kyle Busch get a couple wins under their belts, but
yeah. So I didn't give you any pushback, Michael, because Michael Busch, you're an asshole.
Why?
What?
Why?
Because Kyle Busch is my championship pick, and you took my thunder. You're an asshole.
Oh, the plot thickens, baby. Let's go. Literally, when I texted Cody my championship picks, he responded to me and he was like, "Are you serious?" Or he was like, "Wow. Yes. He might leave the chat now. Actually, I think he's frozen. Is this video frozen?
He definitely froze. I think we blew up his internet with this. 2 Kyle Busch picks for champions. And listen, Kyle Busch is a driver who has a massive chip on his shoulder. The way Joe Gibbs treated him last year, and frankly, I think this relationship has soured for years, really affected how he's raced. Going to RCR, he's going to go to a team where he can really take the reins. You know, Richard Childress is going to give him whatever he wants when he wants it. We're going to see that side of Rowdy Busch that we haven't seen in years. We've already seen it with what he put onto the XM the other day when he was talking shit about Joey Logano. Like, we're going to see that feisty Rowdy Busch, that fiery Rowdy Busch that we haven't seen in a long time. And frankly, you know, we can kind of look back and say, man, Kyle Busch has struggled the last few years, and everybody's like, oh, it's because there hasn't been as much practice, or he hasn't been able to run the Xfinity car or the trucks or whatever, and those are valid points. But the other thing that has not been brought up was the crew chief. When he had, who is it? Jason Ratcliffe? Is that who he had? No, sorry, Adam Stevens. He had Adam Stevens, and he won 2 championships, and that was a great pairing. And then Adam Stevens decided to move on, and they brought in Ben Bayshore. Ben Bayshore was not a crew chief at the Cup level prior to joining up with Kyle Busch. I'm not saying Ben Bayshore is a bad crew chief, but it definitely wasn't a combination that was working. Now he's going to RCR. He's going to be who is he lining up with? Sorry, I have this over here. Yeah, he's hooking up with Randall Burnett. And we saw what he was able to do with Tyler Reddick. That relationship, that crew chief, that driver, dynamic, I think is going to give Kyle Busch the cars to win week in and week out, that fire to perform week in and week out. And we're just going to see an excited Kyle Busch that we haven't seen in a few years. And I'm going to ride that train all the way into the end. And just a side note, Joey Logano and Kyle Busch are now the only 2 active drivers with multiple championships. I think we've already seen it. I think we're going to see that rivalry really ramp up this year. These two-time champions, they're at the top of the sport. They are the guys. And I think that's going to push Kyle Busch to a new level. And I really think he's going to perform. So Kyle Busch is my championship pick. And then my second pick was as a driver Mike has been talking about a lot tonight, and that's Martin Truex Jr. I think Martin Truex Jr. also finds a second gear. He's going to come out. We already saw it in the Clash. I think he's going to win several races. If he does go out, just like Harvick, he's going to go out in a big way. I think Joe Gibbs is going to find that speed that they kind of lacked a little bit last year, and he's going to really outperform maybe his other teammates a little bit. So I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to really make his final year in the Cup Series a memorable one and take it to the championship 4.
I think Martin Truex Jr. will be back in the Cup Series next year, but that's just me. Not with Joe Gibbs Racing, though. We'll see what Dale Earnhardt Jr. in NASCAR has to say about that. So,
Yep.
Damn well they're getting one of those charters at a way cheaper cost when NASCAR takes one. If they're following their rules, if Rick Ware's there at the end of the year, they got to get one of those charters from them.
Poor Rick.
Not really.
I know. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, Rick better sell.
Rick's going to make a lot of money off those charters. Don't feel bad.
I mean, you could have just said, Mike, you're smart, and kept it moving. You didn't have to give us that whole soliloquy. Sean, who are you picking? I'm just fucking with you, dude.
Well, this is going to seem very unoriginal. My picks are Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick.
Wow.
And
Tyler
I
Reddick
just think
talk?
it's almost like that trade that happens in professional sports, that rare trade that works out for both sides. You had Kyle Busch, who was, for the lack of a better term, on a leash at Joe Gibbs Racing. His attitude and their culture does not go together at all. And then also, how checked out was this guy for the back half of the year? Not just him, the team. You telling me that the team was putting as much effort into his car as everybody else's? That's not how NASCAR works. There's an A car. In some cases, like a Hendrick Motorsports, you have a few A car, or a couple A cars. But like Larson and Elliott are getting way more attention than Byron and Bowman. That's sports.
Yeah, it'd be better.
And now Kyle Busch is going to be the guy. And if Kyle Busch wants to go ruffle feathers, you think Childers is going to slap him on the wrist or congratulate him and tell him to go do it again?
Kyle Busch is doing more than ruffling feathers this year. Like, he's gonna be on his own I don't give a fuck tour this year, I think. Whether that works out for him in the end, I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Kyle, I feel like I don't know. We'll see.
Do you know how much Kyle Busch has probably been itching to be able to like really race Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. like as hard as possible, right? Like he's tired of the, all right, give him some space, blah, blah, blah. Like if he's not in, whatever. Like, no, my man, like he's going to have a personal vendetta against Joe Gibbs Racing and the whole organization, man. I'm here for it.
You guys ready for some rapid fire?
Ooh,
No.
Some rapid fire through the teams here. We're gonna preview very briefly each team, not every team, but the ones that count anyway.
Can we start where
there's no fire either. But we're gonna go through each team, and I just want go around the table on each one, how you think they're gonna do this year, and where the team's currently at, and if you think there's prospects for them to go out and get a big fish or something, because there is a intriguing free agent list, in my opinion, at the end of this season. And Martin Truex, Christopher Bell, there's another name that's slipping my mind that's on that list too, that is Alex Bowman. But there's someone else. There's like 4 of them that are pretty high up there that could play.
If you ask Cody, Ryan Blaney is going to be available.
He might not even get a ride in 2024, to be honest, but I digress.
Let's start with these guys. Legacy Motor Club. Where are they going? What are they doing? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Well, I mean, I guess I have to say they're going to do pretty well. I did put Eric Jones in my playoffs, 16 this year. So I honestly have some pretty high expectations for this organization. Obviously, Eric ran really, really well last year. I expect that to continue again another year with the crew chief, driver pairing. Maury Gallagher is clearly putting money into this organization. Jimmy Johnson has now stepped up. He's a part owner. I don't know what that looks like financially, but at least from a data dump of just knowledge, I think Jimmy's going to really provide that backdrop and really help the organization in areas where maybe they were lacking, that he can use some of that Hendrick experience and say, hey, well, you should really fine tune this or work on that. And I think the organization is going to be pretty good. I definitely think Eric Jones, I don't know if he'll win another race this year, but he will be competitive. And I think Noah Gragson, even though he kind of disappointed last year when he drove that 48 car for Hendrick Motorsport, I got a feeling that he is going to be the rookie of the year this year. And run pretty competitively throughout the course of the year. I don't think he'll make the playoffs, but I definitely see him as a top 20 driver.
I'm going to try to be quick with this. Eric Jones, I think, is going to be borderline playoffs. I didn't have him in. I think he's going to compete. I don't think he's going to win a race, but I think they'll be right where they were last year. Noah Gregson's the dark horse. I don't have him in the playoffs. Talent-wise, he should be able to take that equipment and do something with it. The problem is his races with Kaulig last year, and even most of the ones he did in the 48, is he'd run good for the first 2/3 of the race and then just fall off the map at the end. And I think the much longer Cup Series races definitely got to him. He had a hard time not throwing up after Xfinity races, let alone after Cup races. So I do wonder if conditioning will play a factor in his season. But Jimmy Johnson's the one to look out for, because a lot of people were like 5 races. Well, the last interview he did, he said right now his list between 12 and 14, and he needs to trim that down. I say he's going to do somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10, and I think he gets the itch and does more the following season.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm pretty high on Eric Jones this year. I think that he's going to have a really good year. He's definitely going to take a step forward, in my opinion. I definitely see him on the bubble for the playoffs. I have about 14 drivers winning this year, so I think that he's going to be around that 15, 16, 17 mark, battling for points. So, yeah, I have him having a good year. Noah Gragson, I do not. I disagree. I think Ty Gibbs is going to win Rookie of the Year this year. Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel on Legacy at the moment.
Yeah, I'm in agreement when it comes to Eric Jones. I definitely have him on the bubble. He was one of those drivers that I had to, figure out to move him outside of my 16, who I picked for the playoffs. I do think he'll be able to steal a win. I don't necessarily know if that comes in the regular season or if it comes in the playoffs again, like it did last year. I'm very excited for Noah Gragson for sure, because I loved what he did in Xfinity. I do agree with y'all when talking about him with Kaulig and in the 48 last year. Definitely seemed to underperform. But I do think, and I mean, I guess this really isn't saying much, I think he will outperform what Ty Dillon did in the 42 from last year. And I mean, I can see Gragson, fighting for a top 20 spot when the season's all said and done. But I think we're going to see a lot of the same as what we saw last year with this Legacy Motor Club.
All right, we'll keep on going here. God knows we're going to spend lots of time on this team. Front Row Motorsports. Who wants to go first? All right, you could hear a pin drop. I'll say this: they recently just benched. Oh man, who's the young
Todd Gilliland? Yeah, trash move.
Dirty.
Because you're a fringe team who has never been known for spending money. Back in the day when the car Tomorrow came out and that team was first coming in, a few years after that, they were known as the team that would never, ever spend money, would just hoard the sponsor cash they'd get in and make money that way and never even make an attempt at being competitive. For years, Front Row was that team. Travis Quapple was in there. David Gilliland was in there. There was other guys that were in there too. You finally have a young driver who has some potential, pretty good road racer too, might I add, and you bench him. I thought they had something good going in the whole McDowell Gilliland. They're both good road racers. To me, this totally sends the wrong message. We're still only in this to make money, and we don't really care about the results.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, Sean. When it comes to this organization as a whole, knowing what they did to Todd Gilliland, it makes no sense whatsoever. He was a rookie last year. I believe, again, he outperformed the equipment that they have. He had 1 top 5, 2 top 10s. I know some might hear that and think that's very low. But again, this isn't an organization that's known for winning or even, finishing consistently in the top 10. Michael McDowell, I think that he'll have a decent season. This will be another guy that's battling probably for a top 20 spot. But, I don't really see many things changing from last year to this year, just like I said, for Legacy Motor Club.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that y'all said about Todd Gilliland, man. And as far as Michael McDowell, I think that he'll be competitive on the super speedways and some road courses. But outside of that, I think he's going to have a pretty mediocre year. But anything can happen on those super speedways. So he's usually pretty strong and running strong on them. So I guess be on the lookout for him at Daytona and Talladega.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that and say, Michael McDowell definitely has a step back this year. I mean, he had a career year last year, most top 5s, most top 10s. Really, he did perform quite well. But he did lose his crew chief. I forgot that gentleman's name, but I know he's going to be Alex Bowman's crew chief this year for the 48. So he did lose his crew chief, and honestly, that has a lot to do with the driver's success. So I would like to think he'll be a fringe top 20 driver. He definitely is in the prime of his career, but I don't expect a ton from Michael McDowell. And then there's just no other way to say it. What they did to Todd, just criminal. Really, it's an embarrassment to that organization. They should really be ashamed of themselves. It's just optically, why would any driver ever want to drive for them going forward? I mean, even what they're doing, they're doing this for Zane Smith to give him 5 or 6 cup races, and this is not Zane's fault. The kid is talented. He won a Truck Series championship. He's clearly the best Ford driver in their pipeline. And this is an opportunity to put him in the Cup Series, and I understand that. But to do what they did to Todd Gilliland, if I was Zane, I wouldn't even want to drive for this organization, because hell, the next hot ticket that's coming out of the Truck Series could do the same thing to him. So I really just think what Front Row did probably torpedoed any realistic chance of that organization ever being a good team competitively. Todd Gilliland didn't deserve to lose his ride. He, as stated, his results going from the Truck Series to the Cup Series is a no small feat, and he was quite good, especially as a freshman, as a rookie in the series. I really expected him to take a small step forward with the organization and continue his path. And really, I hope Mr. Gilliland finds an opportunity with a different team that respects his talents that Front Row clearly does not.
Yeah, I'd like to see him maybe even end up back in Xfinity for a year next year with a team with a really good equipment. Let him go show what he can do, and then make his way back up to Cup, and maybe better job opportunities are there for him at that point. Let's keep rolling on, though. I don't think I need to say what I think is going to happen with this team. I think I've already made my feelings pretty clear where I think they're heading this year. How about the rest of you?
I think Kevin Harvick has a good year this year. I think he gets a win and makes the playoffs and kind of goes off on the stronger side. And then as far as I think the standout here for me is going to be Chase Briscoe. I think he also takes a step up this year. I loved what I saw last year. I think going into last year when he made the playoffs, he was definitely one of the drivers where I felt like he would be eliminated in that first round of 16, and he definitely proved me wrong. So I'm looking for him to really carry this team and take a step forward this year and win some races and be very competitive.
Yeah, with the Stewart Haas racing, I believe Kevin Harvick was the only one that I picked to make it to the playoffs this year. I do think Chase Briscoe, he's going to take a step back. Unfortunately, it was a nice run to see him in 2022, see what he did, but I don't know. I can't see him getting quote unquote that lucky again like he did in some of the races. Ryan Preece, again, we all agree he hasn't really shown us anything in his career in NASCAR so far. And then, of course, Eric Almirola, if it wasn't for Smithfield, this man likely would have been retired years ago. So, I'm not seeing many or I'm not seeing Stewart Haas getting back into that top tier when it comes to an organization. Kevin Harvick will have them on his back in his final season, and that's basically all.
I mean, you guys pretty much said what I feel. I do not have Briscoe making the playoffs either. I do see him as the future of that organization. I do think he will be a contender going forward, just with how competitive the field is. He's my driver that I think kind of even not even necessarily taking a step back. I just think the rest of the field takes a step forward and he stays the same. I do think Harvick will be the number one focus. He's going to probably have a really solid final year. And just as an organization, I think the organization is kind of at a position where one owner is off running an F1 team, owner is off driving a drag race car. And there's not a lot of leadership running that organization right now. And I think that's going to hinder the whole thing top to bottom this year.
Excuse me. RFK. I think Buescher again. Things are looking up. I hope I'm wrong about Keselowski because obviously that team would be a lot more of a threat if they have two good cars going. Hopefully that happens. I just think his time has passed for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think Brad Keselowski has a rebound year. Kind of in a role reversal with Chase Briscoe. I think he's going to win a race, make the playoffs, and maybe even make a surprise deep run in the playoffs. There was no doubt when he took over, that organization for what is it, Fenway, Roush Fenway. That organization was really down in the gutter. I love Jack Roush, but he's really, kind of at an age where he really couldn't run the organization anymore. And Brad had a lot of work he had to do to get the team to a position where they're bringing fast cars. They had good engineers, good shop people, and that's something that I think he's rectified. So I really do think Brad's going to have a solid year. And I think Chris Busch is going to have a solid year as well. I definitely don't think he takes too big of a step back. But again, the field is just so crowded. I think RFK is going to be a mid-pack team, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I just want to chime in before one of the other guys do. I don't think they improved their team all that much in the offseason. I don't think any team improved their team in terms of engineers that much in the offseason, because one of the complaints right now, I was listening to Brett Griffin talk about this, is there's so many engineers at the bigger teams that the smaller teams would love to get their hands on, by paying them more or getting like the second and third guys from a team and have them be their main guy. But everybody's locked into super long-term deals. Like you have a lot of the engineers right now for a lot of teams that are locked in to 5, some of them 7-year deals for places like Hendrick Motorsports. That makes it really hard for new teams or younger teams, if you will, to go out and get the guys with experience when they're contractually obligated to work elsewhere. So I do think teams like RFK and Kaulig, not so much Trackhouse because they're essentially Chip Ganassi, gotta find different ways to continue to bridge that gap, because I know as active as both teams wanted to be in the offseason, there was only so much they could do. Sorry, long tangent. I do remember Brett Griffin going off saying he wishes there was a restriction on how long you can lock up staff for, because they don't get enough notoriety. They don't get enough attention. A lot of their names aren't even known. And yet behind the scenes, they can be a big time powerhouse at a team. So.
Yeah, I think when it comes to RFK, the best way to put it when it comes to Brad Keselowski is his first year, last year in 2022, was owner Brad Keselowski. He had so many things that needed to be changed within that organization as to what it was before he got there. He needed to get things changed his way to make the organization as a whole better. So 2022 was owner Brad Keselowski. 2023 is going to be driver Brad Keselowski. I think he's going to be able to get back to it, kind of find his groove that he didn't have in 2022. And like I said, I have him in my playoffs. I think he's able to get a win, maybe 2. And then when it comes to Chris Buescher, again, we said it on this show that, yes, he definitely was all over the place when it came to the final 10 to 12 races of the season. He was consistent, won a race at Bristol, looked very strong. I do think that there's a good chance that he can carry that momentum into 2023. And I that would just be awesome for RFK if both drivers were even able to make it to the playoffs. So I do think RFK is going to be much better than what they were in 2022.
And sorry, I'm just going to chime in super quick. Chris Buescher won that race at Bristol, but Brad Keselowski was the best driver that day.
100%.
He had a flat tire and was well on his way to winning that race. So I think Brad Keselowski is more than capable of winning.
He should have held his tire up then, I guess. For me, I definitely think Brad Keselowski takes a step up this year. I agree with Cody. I think that he was in owner mode last year, and he's going to be in driver mode this year. I do think even though he's going to take a step up, he will be on that bubble to make the playoffs. And as far as Chris Buescher, man, I feel like that he, towards the end of that season last year, he did very well all over the place. I think he gets a win this year and makes it back into the playoffs. So we'll see. But I definitely think the big one here for me is Brad Keselowski. That's who I'm going to have my eyes on.
All right. Next up, Kaulig Racing. Let's start with the impartial people. Let's go to Mike.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this team, if I'm being quite honest with you. No, listen, man, I was really impressed with them last year, to be honest with you, and I think one of my most excited things that I'm looking forward to seeing this year is AJ being full time in the Cup Series. I think that he has a really strong year. I as well think that he wins not only one road course, but he does win an oval track too. I think he's very underrated on the on an oval track, and he's going to be able to show people that he is more than just a road course racer, especially especially more towards the people that don't follow him on a regular basis. And then Justin Haley, man, I'm excited to see what if he takes that extra step forward this year as well. If he can improve from just being a super speedway racer, can he improve on an actual oval? And I think that he can, man. I'm really excited for this team in general, and I'm excited for what they have going into 2023.
Yeah, with Kaulig racing, I just look at it. AJ Allmendinger, like I said earlier, I think he's going to come in. He's going to win 2-3 races, make it far into the playoffs to that round of 8. And then Justin Haley, he had 2 top 5s in the playoffs last year. Like, nobody's expecting that. I think Justin Haley's going to be able to take a step forward in 2023 as well. I think Kaulig racing is going to, I'm not going to necessarily say shock the world, but they're going to be put on a lot of people's radar moving forward in 2023.
First and foremost, I'm going to hire Cody as the hype man for Kaulig racing, because you've got more excitement about him than I do, and I feel like I'm the front man for all things Kaulig racing at this point. On that note, super quick shout out to Kaulig Nation, Dinger Nation, and the Chandler Smith Facebook pages. All of y'all are awesome. I hope you're listening to this show. But with that said, I think Kaulig racing takes a step forward as well. I do think AJ going full time is going to benefit the entire organization. I do see him getting one win this year. Where that might be, I'm still not 100% sure. But they're going to be pretty competitive, I think, in most races. It's surprisingly, the short tracks are probably going to be their weakness. That's last year, and they weren't super good at the Coliseum this year. So, but with that said, I think AJ makes the playoffs, has a really strong year, helps elevate the organization to a point where they'll probably go 3 cars next year. And then Justin Haley, again, he's still really young. He's only in his second full-time season. He takes some steps forward, but I think there's going to be some inconsistency there that keeps him out of the playoffs. But all in all, I think Kaulig racing starts to separate themselves out of the mid-pack group and really starts to work their way up to an organization that's going to be kind of considered a top-notch organization going into the years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's potential for them to win some races this year. I'm not saying they're going to, but I think they're competing for some as the season goes. God knows there's 6 tracks that Allmendinger is going to be right there on, and I expect he is probably going to win at least one of them. I have my eyes on Chicago for that one. I can't see there being a better favorite than him on a street course, although that's going to be carnage. Like if you guys want to watch a quick race, don't watch that one because it's going to be Yellow Flag City. It's going to be bad. Like I don't know if you guys remember Montreal when the nationwide cars used to run there, or Xfinity. That's about how wide this track's going to be, which is not wide at all. So it's going to be crazy there. I think Kaulig will be good. But until they get over the hump of whatever this thing is at tracks like Martinsville, tracks like Phoenix, tracks like Richmond, like all 3 of those, they are fucking dreadfully bad at. And yet they're pretty good at Dover and Bristol. So they got to figure out whatever the issue is there. I mean, they have a guy in Allmendinger, his best oval before this past year, people would have said up and down would be Martinsville, and just can't get anything done with that for whatever reason. None of their cars run good there. So I think they'll improve as long as they don't fall too far off or too far back from what the Hendricks and the Penske's and the Joe Gibbs do. So have that to look forward to. Trackhouse guys, Trackhouse, what are we expecting?
For me, I definitely think they take a step back. I know we kind of talked about it earlier. I don't know, man. I just feel like that Daniel Suarez, I think that he misses the playoffs, obviously, with my playoff selections. I don't have him making it. And then Ross Chastain, I think that he gets a win this year, maybe 2. But I don't know, man. I just feel like his consistency level last year, really, especially towards the end of the season, he was just like running mid-pack, and I felt like that, we were just not talking about him at all. And obviously he was on the brinks of making it to that, next round, and then he did what he did, so to make it to the championship. So I just think that both cars kind of take a step back this year. Doesn't mean they're going to be terrible. I think they'll both be kind of fighting for that playoff spot as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Trackhouse definitely takes a step back. I said earlier, Daniel Suarez, I don't have him in my playoffs. I don't think he gets a win in 2023. When it comes to Ross Chastain, I can see him getting a win, maybe two, but here's maybe not as big as a bold prediction as some may think, but I don't think that I think Ross Chastain makes it to the playoffs, but I don't see him making it past the round of 12.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. I didn't mention it in my drivers in trouble segment, but Suarez was also one of my drivers that I had listed there. He was all right, but he drove mid pack more often than not, and I think that's where he's going to be. Ross, the tracks he won are tracks that you can't guarantee wins at. He won at Talladega, he won at the road course at Coda. But he didn't win an oval, like a mile and a half. So I have won't actually win a race this year. I do think his consistency will actually be pretty good, but overall the organization I do think takes a small step back. And I think Ross is actually a driver that will make the playoffs, but on points and not by winning a race this year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the guy in the 16 car hasn't forgotten Coda. I'd probably remember that one. So anyways, I think both of them make the playoffs. I think Suarez is dangerous on that dirt track. And then with the road courses, I get it. They, in my opinion, stupidly changed the rule to get rid of stages. To me, stages are either in or out. But that's a discussion for another day. It's still going to be carnage at the end. Like, if you don't think there was restarts late in road courses before there was this system, there were definitely. NASCAR has a habit of, oh my God, look at that Coke bottle out there. We got to throw the caution. It just always seems to happen. It's something people have hated on for years. And I think a late restart at a road course, I wouldn't bet against Daniel Suarez. He could definitely come out with one. Chastain, I think he'll point in too. I don't think he'll win, but they're fringe playoff guys. I don't see Trackhouse being, top 5, top 10. They're like 13 to 16, in my opinion. 23-11. How do we feel about them?
I love it, man. 23-11. I think that they're going to have a great season. I picked both Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick to make it to the playoffs. I have Tyler Reddick in the championship 4 to compete for a championship. I think that when the season's over with, we can see these two drivers combining for about 5 to 6 wins this season. So 23-11 is they're definitely coming up. It's their season to really shine.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I think both drivers win this year. I think that organization in its third year is really coming into their own. Again, they've got the right people in the right places now. They're still a Toyota organization, which I really think rebounds. They kind of had a rough year last year. I think Toyota as a whole rebounds, and 23-11 is going to be the beneficiary of that. We all agree Tyler Reddick. He's a multi-time Xfinity champion and really, and I think a lot of people's eyes is a future superstar of the sport. And I think this year is the first year where he really has the opportunity to separate himself from the pack a little bit and really join the upper echelon of drivers. And I think he does do that with several wins. And then Bubba also coming into his prime. I mean, he's right at that age now where he's had a lot of seasoning. He's had several years in mediocre equipment and now in good equipment. And I think he's got the right attitude this year. I mean, he's really, again, we've said it multiple times, the no fucks given attitude seems to be the right attitude with this new car. And he's definitely coming in with that mentality of he's going and he's going to do what he needs to do. And I think that's going to benefit him, and he's going to really run well, make the playoffs, and win some races.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of what they said. I think Tyler Reddick, he really speaks for himself. I think being able to come over to a new team, I don't think that's going to affect him much, but I think he's going to bring a lot of energy to this team. And then as far as Bubba Wallace, I think that he takes a step up this year. I thought that win at Kansas last year for him was really, really good. He was running up front. I think he made a pit stop, I believe, or something happened. He got shuffled mid-pack and then was able to battle back up front to win the race. I thought that was a big confidence boost for him. And then once they really made those changes on pit road with the pit crew, you saw that Bubba Wallace's team kind of take a step forward, and they were knocking down some top 10s. So I definitely think that both teams, the 45 and the 23, are going to have really, really good seasons, and I have both of them making the playoffs.
I have Bubba just outside of the playoffs because eventually you got to cut somebody. But I was very impressed with what he was able to do in better equipment last year. I thought the jury was out on what he was able to do with this team, or prior to this team, pardon me. I thought he was serviceable in the 43, but I thought he stepped into top tier equipment and made it look like he didn't seem out of place. And I think that's really important because the second you become Casey Mears, you end up looking for a job despite your last name. So anyways, that's a story for another day. RCR, fellas.
Well, I mean, according to all of y'all, Kyle.
I mean, this,
champion.
This is obvious. I have Kyle Busch winning the championship, and if Cody doesn't like it, he's more than welcome to exit.
I definitely see a virtual door Cody can take a step out if he doesn't get on board.
And I, as far as Austin Dillon, I don't know. Will he get a win? Sure, I guess. But honestly, let me not shit on Tyler Reddick because I might be wrong on this. But Cody, he had a better average finish than Tyler Reddick did last year, correct?
He did. Austin Dillon was pretty consistent last year, but I mean, we all know that NASCAR is about wins, not consistency for the most part. But yes, I think Austin Dillon was like a percentage point better as far as average finishes go than Tyler Reddick was.
Gotcha. But yep, that's kind of how I feel about RCR this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, it's going to be, like I said, a learning curve for Kyle Busch, but I do have him in the playoffs. I think Austin Dillon, I know he gets a lot of hate. I totally get it. But something tells me he's going to have a pretty good year, like maybe his best career year. So that's kind of how I see it playing out for RCR this season.
Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think Austin Dillon is who he is at this point. And there's nothing wrong with Austin Dillon. I know he gets a lot of crap because he's the grandson of the owner. And, I think we're going to see that play out with Ty Gibbs in the years to come as well. But he's earned his seat. He's performed at a level that a lot of drivers haven't. I mean, he's got, how many wins does he have now? 4 or 5, which a lot of drivers can't say they've done. So Austin is one of those guys that can sneak up and win a race out of kind of nowhere. But his consistency has always been pretty good. It's going to be good enough this year. Again, with the quality of the field, how much talent is in the sport, I just don't think his level of consistency is good enough. But he's good, and there's nothing wrong with Austin Dillon. I will say driving with Kyle Busch as a teammate should help him. I don't think he's ever had a driver. Clearly, he's never had a driver of the caliber of Kyle Busch alongside, and I think Kyle can provide some insights and some intrigue that's going to help him be a better driver. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can change, and he is there. But Kyle Busch, again, 3 of the 4 of us have him winning a championship. I just think that what Richard is going to unlock his mentality and allow him to be Kyle Busch again, and that's a dangerous thing for the field.
Yeah, I mean, all things seem to be pointing up for Kyle Busch, and unless you're Cody, who thinks he's basically done after this year. And Austin Dillon could very well win a super speedway. I know he fluked into the one last year, kind of, but he's got a history of being able to be pretty decent at those tracks. So, yeah, I think RCR will be okay. Penske, fellas.
Well, Cody, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Joey Logano might be the only one to get a win for that organization in 2023. I said what I said. Listen, I'm gonna double down on what I said. And look, I don't hate Ryan Blaney. I know that it might sound like I do, but the stats don't lie. Like I said, he has 5 career wins, 6 career wins in 5 seasons with Penske. That's not cutting it for an organization like that. Austin Cindric might have a better season than Ryan Blaney this year. I'm just saying it very well could happen.
My God.
Yeah, I said what I said, but Joey Logano will be the best driver out of this 3-team stable, and like I said, I think Joey Logano wins back-to-back championships.
So I think Cody kind of saved himself there at the end. Joey Logano is going to be the best driver out of these 3. I just think that he is. He's just gonna have a very good season, and I think he's gonna really be able to back up what he did last year and compete at a very high level as he always does. As far as Ryan Blaney, I think that Ryan Blaney's gonna compete at a high level as well. I have him winning a race this year, nothing more, nothing less. And then Austin Cindric, honestly, not a whole lot of confidence really at all. I didn't really see a lot last year, to be quite honest with you. But maybe that changes this year. Obviously he won the 500. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. I'll be nice. I'll be nice.
So
I won't.
Let me
I
do
won't.
Mike math for a second before Ryan goes. I'll be quick. Alex Bowman needs to win a bunch of races. William Byron
Yeah.
needs to win a bunch of races. Austin Cindric wins a race, one more than Ryan Blaney, might add. And help me.
Well, I'll tell you this. Listen, hell of a block or put your teammate in the wall move he did last year to win that 500. But listen, he was up there. He was competing. But I agree with what Denny Hamlin said on his podcast. You can luck into a win at a super speedway. Can you luck into 2, 3, or 4? Not really. So we'll see what he does. We'll see what he does this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to be nice. I think Austin Cindric is going to be a dumpster truck this year. Just going to suck. I don't expect anything out of him. Sophomore in a Cup Series, there's usually a sophomore slump. He did not show me much anything, even though he did win the 500 last year. I just don't think he's very good. So I just think Austin Cindric's going to be a waste of a seat, honestly, for the next few years, and he'll eventually be replaced. Joey Logano, I mean, I love Joey Logano. His floor is top 8 year in and year out. So he will, again, probably be the lead organization. He's going to probably win 2 races, and he's going to make the top 8. That's just what he does. He's a 2-time champion. You know, you could easily have an argument that he's the best driver in the sport currently, based off of his record and his age. He's got another decade. We could look back in a few years and say, man, Joey Logano was the guy. So I think that's where he is. Obviously, I've said what I said about Ryan Blaney. I mean, listen, he didn't win last year, but that dude was the most consistent driver in the sport, even more consistent than Chase Elliott, in my opinion. He was top 5 week in, week out. And eventually, statistically, that catches up, and he's going to get some wins. Now, I said 4 earlier in the back a little bit. I'm going to say 2 to 4. But he is going to get his wins. He's going to have multiple wins. And I think Ryan Blaney is a dark horse to make the championship for this year.
I think Penske will do Penske things. They'll be competitive. I don't know how many wins Blaney or Cindric will get. I'll say if neither one of them win again, well, Cindric did win last year, actually. I still think at the end of the season, there'll be some reevaluating going on, but I don't think anybody's going anywhere. I think they're pretty locked in with what they have at the moment for at least a couple of years, and then they'll go from there. Joe Gibbs, guys.
Going to be interesting, that's for sure. Knowing this is Martin Truex Jr.'s last season with them, no Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, can he finally get that championship that he has yet to get? Ty Gibbs being a rookie. And then, of course, Christopher Bell, is he going to be able to duplicate the success that he was able to have in 2022? We'll see. I think we all agree Martin Truex Jr. is going to come back to what we're accustomed to seeing, and that's getting wins. Denny Hamlin's going to do what he does. I think Christopher Bell's going to be able to get 1 or 2 wins this season. I just don't know if Ty Gibbs is going to be able to do it. You know, he was in that 23 last year for 23-11, and I guess we can kind of compare him to Noah Gragson, right? Like, he didn't necessarily perform like what we thought he would be capable of doing in that great equipment. So jury's out on Ty Gibbs, but I think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to have a very similar year as what they did in 2022.
I personally think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to take a leap forward. I said the same thing with 2311. I think Toyota as a whole, forward as an organization. Last year, they simply didn't perform to Toyota standards, and that probably gets rectified this year. And Joe Gibbs, top to bottom, is going to be really damn stout. I had Martin Truex as my championship runner-up. I think he's going to take his consistency and turn them into wins. And he's going to be really good. Denny Hamlin's Denny Hamlin. He's been year in and year out one of the best drivers. He's going to continue to win multiple races. And then Christopher Bell. I think Christopher Bell will be the face of that franchise going forward. And he won 2 races, maybe even 3. I don't remember, but he won a couple of races last year. He made the championship 4. And again, he's a young guy. He's only in his mid-20s. He's only going to get better. So I think Christopher Bell also continues to perform at a high level. And Ty Gibbs is a rookie. I don't have a ton of expectations, but again, he's driving for this organization. He could definitely be kind of a guy that I don't have on the radar winning, but he could actually win. There's no question about it. So all in all, top to bottom, all 4 drivers in that stable are going to be tough outs. And I think the JGR is just going to have a really dominating year.
Is Christopher Bell a free agent next year?
Yes, he is.
Is he? I thought he signed it. I thought he was extended through next year, but yeah,
we'll never know with NASCAR contracts.
Listen, I think that Christopher Bell is the face of Joe Gibbs going forward. I think they're going to have to throw the bank at him whenever his contract is up. And I think he deserves it, man. I think that he's going to take a big step forward this year. We saw him really step up to the plate in the playoffs last year in must-win moments, and he delivered, and that team delivered. Obviously came short in the end, but listen, man, I think that Christopher Bell is going to be phenomenal this year. We're going to see him really shine. Denny Hamlin. I have him winning the most races this year. And then Ty Gibbs, I think that he wins Rookie of the Year, but I don't think that he gets a win this year. And then Martin Truex Jr., we talked about him. I think that he takes a step up and goes back to form, what we're used to from Martin. But listen, man, I'm telling you, and I'm not playing homer here, but if they don't throw the bank at Christopher Bell, I know somebody who will.
Yeah, given I just checked when he signed his last deal. It should be up at the end of this year. It doesn't give exact terms, but from his last deal, it's already been 3 years.
I have a feeling they're gonna have to throw the bank at him, because who else do they really have in their arsenal? Like, I know they have Ty Gibbs, but you really got to start building for the future with Martin Truex Jr. being on his way out and Denny Hamlin, not getting any younger. But again, I just know of a 48 team that's getting ready to have a car open that I know somebody that will give him some money. So, and you want to talk about having a young assembled team. I mean, that would be a big pull for Hendrick if they can get Christopher Bell. But I think that Joe Gibbs will throw the bank at Bell, and he'll stay at Gibbs.
Sometimes it's not about the bank, though. I mean, I know he wasn't willing to throw the bank at Kyle Busch, apparently, or claiming there weren't sponsors willing to step up, and somehow RCR has new sponsors and extended sponsors and all that. So, but I think it's a cultural thing. And again, I don't want to open that door where we get into like a political and personal beliefs talk or whatever, but I do think freedom is a big thing, and he was pissed about the dirt racing thing, and I would not, count it out. If he has a chance to make more money and end up at Hendrick, why the hell wouldn't you do that?
Hendrick will let him race dirt.
Yeah, he will. They will. Do you want to go to Hendrick and be the number 3 driver? because if he went to Hendrick, he'd be the number 3
I
driver.
got news for you. The number one driver at that team is not going to be him moving forward just because of family ties.
Well, we have to see how good Ty Gibbs is. I mean, if Ty is as advertised, I agree with
Busch
you.
got kicked the fuck out the door for this guy.
Yeah, well, Christopher Bell's 10 years younger than Kyle Busch. So
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look at it from that perspective too. But
I look at
listen,
it from this perspective. If I was rich and I could put Mike in my car that I'm buying a charter for next season, or I could put Cody in the car, I could put
Ooh, say
Ryan in the
less.
car, or I could put my kid in the car. Probably going to put the kid in the car.
It's messed up, bro.
And I think he has shown that side too. I would bet on Christopher Bell leaving, but it's also not like there's nobody else in the Toyota faction that can step up. I know people are sort of lukewarm on John Hunter Nemechek, but like that could be a possibility. I mean, 2311 was apparently ready to act on him if they needed to. So
yeah, I just want to quickly talk on this because it's not a big deal to the outcome of the racing team itself, but the loss of Corey Gibbs really can't be understated. I mean, Joe Gibbs, as much as he's done for that team and for that organization, he is out of touch. He's an old geezer. He's funding, he's paying the bills, he's doing what Joe Gibbs does. But really, it was Coy and JD running that organization. And now that they're both gone, I am curious to see how that affects that team. It really could have a negative impact. And we kind of saw that with Christopher Bell because it was Coy who was basically letting him run dirt. So we'll see how that plays out.
yeah, I think I think I would never bet against a human being and their ability to, overcome and persevere through tragedy. And I think Ty Gibbs has that on his platter. I'm not the kid's biggest fan, even though he's on my team. But you telling me that Ty Gibbs won the Daytona 500 wouldn't have people tearing up? Fuck, it'd probably have me tearing up, if I'm being honest. So,
I mean, I think that's one of the great things about the Daytona 500. That's a real possibility that he could win that race. So, yeah, I mean, that would be great. That would be great.
did we all do that one? I know we kind of got off there. I can't remember.
I think so.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess we saved the best for last. Not my favorite, but no doubt they're the pinnacle of the sport. Hendrick.
Long
Motorsports.
as y'all know. As long as y'all know.
Well, you know what? I think Hendrick Motorsports is going to be Hendrick Motorsports, and they're going to be the best team with Joe Gibbs Racing. And there's no question that they've got some of the best talent in the series. I mean, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott. I mean, even I know some people aren't as high on William Byron as I am.
Nope.
I personally put him on my fantasy team for a reason. I think he also is a young guy that's coming into his own right along with Christopher Bell, who's going to start winning a ton of races. And they've clearly got the infrastructure, the cars, the engineers, the crew chiefs, the whole nine. That just makes them year in and year out the best organization. I fully expect Larson, Elliott, and Byron to get theirs and win a ton of races. I do think Bowman's luck runs out and he has a tough year. But all in all, I mean, Hendrick Motorsports is a juggernaut, and they're not slowing down anytime soon.
I'm gonna swap with Ryan. I think, and I know y'all think I hate Alex Bowman, but I do think that he gets a win, and I do think that he makes the playoffs, and I do not think that William Byron gets a win. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel. And then I think Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson kind of speak for themselves. I think they'll each get at least 2 wins apiece. I don't know. I think. We were so used to Kyle Larson when he had that when he won the championship and he won a lot of races. How many races was it, Cody? Because I know you know.
10.
So he won 10 races, and last year he won 3, and we thought that was a real step back for him. And I guess with expectations of being able to compete for a championship as far as making it to the Final Four, you can say he underperformed. But being able to win 3 races is still really good, and especially in a year where everybody was kind of on the same playing field with that new car. I thought he had a good year last year. Again, might not be up to some people's expectations, but I think that he has a bounce back year, which is crazy to say because he did win 3 races last year. But I don't know. I'm excited. I would say for him more than anybody on that team, because I do feel like that he kind of flew under the radar last year and nobody really talked about him. I feel like the most they talked about him was when he was in the incident with Bubba Wallace, and other than that, I just felt like that he was just kind of flew under the radar, and that's not what Kyle Larson does. So I'm excited to see him kind of step back up and go back into that spotlight and be talked about week to week for sure.
My championship 4, I have Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, and Chase Elliott. So 50% of that championship 4 I have coming out of Hendrick. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if one of the Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson is replaced by a William Byron in that championship 4.
Oh my God.
I'm very high on William Byron, man. He took big strides in 2022, like we agreed with Christopher Bell as well. I think that they mirror one another. And I really think that Byron is going to be able to basically add on to what he did last season. So I do think those top 3 drivers for Hendrick are going to make it to the round of 8. And I do have 2 of them making it to the championship 4. It's just Alex Bowman, I don't have him making the playoffs. I think this might be his last year with Hendrick.
And I hate Alex Bowman.
Man, well, as long as it comes to Kaulig, I can live with it. Hendrick Motorsports is the pinnacle. I have all 4 drivers in the chase. I thought about William Byron out. I, for my team's sake, hope Alex Bowman has a career year and makes the championship 4. But yeah, I mean, it's Hendrick Motorsports. It's the team every other team should strive to be when you're the best, and they're the best. I don't think that's debatable. So yeah, any closing thoughts on that, fellas, before we preview these fantasy teams? All righty. So first up, don't ask me where he came up with his name. We have Mondo's team, competitors of Mondo, or under Mondo, pardon me. I think the under was supposed to be capitalized, so it was competitors under Mondo, if you catch his drift. Larson, Wallace, Keselowski, and Harvick. Gotta say, it's not a bad team.
Not at all, especially if Keselowski steps up this year. I think the big ones on his team are going to be Keselowski and Harvick, and I think that they both have really good bounce back years. So if that comes to be true, he's got a really good team here.
I think Kyle Larson's the one to. Sorry, one second.
Yeah. I mean, Larson is clearly the workhorse of that team. When you look at how many wins that team can put together, I think at least half, if not 3/4 of the wins are going to come from Larson. So depending on how Larson goes is probably how his team's going to go. But certainly I think Bubba Wallace and Harvick have really strong years. And I think Keselowski is a really good 4th driver on that team.
Kyle Larson, I think, is key simply because I think he's going to be one of the only drivers actually this year to go out and win 4 or 5 races.
This dude really bid 40 points on Kyle Larson. Like, I thought I was overdoing it by bidding. I think I bid like 29 on Kyle Larson. I was for sure I had him in the bag, and not at all. So that one stung a little bit, but no, this team definitely with Larson, I think Bubba Wallace, again, I think he'll get about maybe 2 wins this year. Keselowski has a bounce back year. And then Kevin Harvick, again, last year driving full-time in NASCAR, he's not going to give a fuck. So this is a solid team right here.
Next up is Reno's team, Ghosts of Talladega, Logano, Blaney, Truex, and Haley. I actually think Reno has the better team between the 2 of them.
Yeah,
if you take out Blaney, but anyway.
No, I think so too. I mean, I think Logano speaks for himself. Blaney, I think, is going to have a really good year, at least get a win. And then, again, I think Truex is going to be really good this year, and he's going to have a bounce back year. And what a way to kick it off with a win at the Clash. So, and then Justin Haley, I mean, I talked about it earlier. I'm super excited for that team in general. So, yeah, man, really good team here. Really good team. I think that this team is definitely better than the last.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Penske Racing is never a bad horse to get behind. I mean, Logano, as I said, his floor is top 8. Blaney has the potential to make a Final Four, and Truex does too. And Haley is you just need somebody that Haley's going to be good at super speedways. He's going to should be pretty consistent. So again, when you're rounding out a 4-team squad, I think he has 3 elite drivers and some. We're not going to hurt him and be consistent.
Yeah, Logano, I mean, as I said, he was my championship pick. So, he has him on his team. You have Truex, who's definitely going to have a bounce back year. Justin Haley, who came on strong last year, he should be able to build upon that. And then he has Ryan Blaney. So, there's that.
I will say this: Truex is a driver that I was seriously considering bidding on because I wanted Truex in my stable this year. I really do think Truex is going to have a fantastic season.
All right, next up we got Mike's team, Chasing Ships. Thoughts on Mike's guys?
Very top heavy.
And apologies, that's supposed to be Buescher.
Very, very top heavy, which isn't a bad thing. Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin. I mean, those two right there, he could very well win it just based off of that. And then, if Chris Buescher's able to put it together like he did those last 10 races of the season, same with Eric Jones, Mike's team looks pretty strong. I'm not going to lie to you.
I have concerns. Again, I think all 6 teams have strong teams, and you have to kind of look at the margins when you're putting together an overall season championship. And certainly Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, those 2 drivers could lead the entire series in wins. Those 2 guys, but then you have, I think, some inconsistencies with Jones and Buescher, and when you're tallying overall points, I just think if 50% of your team underperforms, you're going to struggle in the whole thing.
I think Mike is one of the 2 top teams in this thing, in my opinion, the way he drafted. So I don't know if he's first or second, but I think he's one of the top 2, and I think the other guy is this guy, Ryan's team. Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, William Byron, Ross Chastain for real this time. What do you guys think?
That's the most consistent team for sure. Like probably the most well-built team at that. If Kyle Busch performs like the 3 y'all believe he's going to, you have Christopher Bell, William Byron, who I think is going to do well. And then Ross Chastain, if he can duplicate what he did last season, I mean, this team might just run away with the whole thing.
I mean, it looks good on paper. But I'm just trying to be consistent with what I said earlier in the show. I'm not trying to backtrack, but then again, listen, I'm very, very high on Kyle Busch. I have him winning the championship, so that is an excellent pickup. I think Christopher Bell takes a huge step this year, so I'm very high on these first 2 drivers. And then, I made it known that as far as William Byron goes, I don't think that he gets a win, and I think that Ross Chastain takes a step back this year. So Byron and Chastain are not as weak as my back half of my team. So I would give the edge to Ryan for sure as far as overall team. So I wouldn't say any major concerns with Ryan. I think that he has the better balanced overall team, but just kind of being fair about what I said earlier in the podcast as far as Byron and Chastain go. Those would be my only concerns, and that's just nitpicking, honestly.
So for me, I look at Chastain versus Buescher and I go, Chastain last year won, but I can't guarantee that's going to happen this year. And I'm very on the fence with William Byron, but I have no doubt William Byron's going to perform better than Eric Jones. However, even though I picked Kyle Busch to win the championship, I could very easily see Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin way outpointing Kyle Busch and Christopher Bell. And that's where I'm kind of like, where do you end up? Because at the end of the day, it's not, hey, I got 5 wins. It's no, how many points did your guy accumulate in the races that he started? Remember, that's another part of this. You got to choose who's starting each race without passing the limits. And it's like,
Well, you have that, and I don't want to throw this out here. I don't want to put any bad juju on these drivers, but um, you know, one of the big things coming into this year is who is going to be out with a concussion, who's going to miss some races, and I hate to bring that up, but NASCAR made it a point to kind of soften the back end of these hits. And listening to Denny Hamlin on his podcast in the Clash, he walked away pretty banged up and kind of bruised and sore. So I don't know if NASCAR really fixed the problem that they wanted to fix. And unfortunately, I think that is going to rear its ugly head at some point in the 2003 season.
Yeah, and I think just piggybacking off that, the older drivers a little bit more, the guys that have gone through some harder hits, and we've seen that with some drivers now, obviously Dale we go. Then we obviously saw what happened with Kurt Busch, and even Alex Bowman had a slight concussion. So it's definitely a big risk. But also look at what we saw at the Clash is maybe an anomaly because that track is so small that the drivers had no choice but to run each other over. Once we get them to 1.5 miles, they're going to be spaced out more. And the bigger test is going to be how do they back into the wall? Because if the car crushes the way it's supposed to or the way we're expecting it to, that should hopefully alleviate some of those concerns with the bigger impacts. Now, we heard a lot of drivers say those small impacts still hurt. But we'll see how the bigger impacts play out when the rear actually does crumple. And now just to my team, I mean, I intentionally built a roster that I thought was going to be consistent across the board that can perform at all styles of track. Obviously, I have 2 drivers on my team that made the championship 4 last year. So, I mean, I feel pretty good about where I am in terms of drivers being able to win races and accumulate points. Will I win as many races as a Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott combo? Maybe not. But I think all 4 drivers could very easily finish the regular season in the top 10 in points. And I just can't say that for some of the other teams with their back half drivers. So, I mean, I do think Ross probably takes a slight step back, but I could also see William Byron stepping up. And then obviously Christopher Bell and Kyle Busch speak for themselves. I think a lot of those guys are my workhorses.
Yeah, so things didn't go as planned. Boy, does this team look different if you change out Suarez for Reddick, in my opinion. But it sucked. I had 4 guys I wanted. I got 3 of the 4. And but to lose your first, it kind of sets you way back. So I'm hoping to be surprised. I think choosing where certain guys start on certain tracks, knowing their strengths is going to be vital. Knowing that you can only, I have to go back and look at our rules, but start your driver so many races in a row. I think it's going to be vital, choosing on when you sit that guy. So I'm hoping to get a little lucky, but I'm well aware of what happened.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Sean. Yeah, I mean, look, I feel like me and you are in the same boat. I think, we look at these other 4 teams that we've seen. I think they're better than both of us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Allmendinger, I think he's going to do well for you. Not a believer in Suarez, not a believer in Bowman, and Gibbs is definitely the wild card right there. We don't know what we're going to get from him this year, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I think Bowman is going to get you a win this year. I think AJ gets you 2. Suarez has the potential to get you 1 to 2, and then Gibbs, he may get lucky at a super speedway, but we'll see. I think you got at least 3 wins here, Sean.
Yeah, Sean, I hate to tell it to you, buddy, but I think you got in your own head a little bit and overthought this a little bit too much here with where you went on your draft picks. It's going to be a struggle for you. I think Mike was pretty eloquent with where you stand. You probably get 3 wins and probably only 2 drivers, maybe 3 that make the playoffs in general. So unless somebody really swings and hits it out of the park like a Suarez, you're going to have a tough time.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just going to say the big thing about this, Sean, I feel confident that 3 of these drivers can get 1 win this year. Gibbs is the wild card for me.
fellas, I mean, with all due respect, I couldn't give a shit about wins. I care about point total.
True. True.
And there's a big difference between playing point total and hoping your guy gets 5 wins. Now, obviously, the guy that wins the race more often than not gets close to the most points in that race. But I even you take Suarez out, you put Reddick in. I thought I had a stable that could go out there and run consistent anyways, and losing that sucked, but it is what it is. Cody, the shake and bakes. I actually had to redo Cody's, so apologies for the fonts not being all colored in, but I had not Cindric. I had Logano on your team for some reason. I think Donnie posted you got in Logano.
Hey, that's fine. You can give him to me. I need him. All right, because look, I mean, Tyler Reddick. I think obviously he is going to be the head of this 4-team stable, but outside of that, man, it's just a whole bunch of hope. I hope Briscoe can do better than what he did last season. That would be a plus. Austin Dillon got consistent towards the end of the season. Hopefully he can build upon that. I don't necessarily see it. And then Austin Cindric, man, it's just one of those things where you're hoping that in his sophomore year, he's able to turn it on like how he looked in the Xfinity series. But, the competition is so much better in the Cup Series than the Xfinity Series. So it's just one of those things where, you hope that the team's able to put it together, but I don't have that much faith in it.
Yeah, I mean, I've made my feeling about Austin Cindric going into this year. I just don't think he's going to be very good. Not saying he can't have some weekends where he's really competitive, but I just don't think he's going to be able to consistently perform. Austin Dillon, again, consistent, but how well, or how many points you're going to score week in and week out with top 15s. You need Reddick to go off week in and week out and just dominate, and he can. I mean, if there's one thing looking at your roster, you have a guy in Tyler Reddick that could easily dominate a regular season and just stack points for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tyler Reddick is obviously your workhorse here. And I'm very confident in him this year to be able to run consistent, win races, and accumulate points. So I have confidence in him. Briscoe, yeah.
Just hearing Reddick's name hurts.
So one last thing that I want to talk about my team real quick. I went with Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin. That in that first round, I saw that nobody bid on Bubba Wallace. So I put in like 2 points, I believe, for Bubba, or 1 point, and I thought that I was going to be able to snag him. And somebody went in that second round and put some points on him. I'd be curious to know how many points. But yeah, that was the one that I felt like I kind of left out, that like I really wish I would have got, because I felt like that. I don't know. I just didn't think anybody was going to snag him up, and I thought I'd be able to get him for super cheap. And obviously, I was outbid. So if I would have got those 3, I would have been very, very, very confident. But very confident in my top 2. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think we have 3 tiers of teams here. I truly believe that. I think you have Mike and Ryan as your top tier. Your middle tier right now, in my opinion, is Reno and Mondo, and you have Cody and I at the bottom. But who knows, guys? Like, it doesn't take much to change things and throw a wrench in things, and someone has an off year. And Danny Hamlin's year started last year. There's that too. So
yeah, hey, that's why you play the game, right? That's why you show up to the racetrack. There is no given week in and week out.
Choosing who you start each race is important too. I can tell you, AJ Allmendinger will be starting all my road courses. Anyways, though, I think that is going to do it for tonight. Cody, Mike, where can everybody find you at, man? Fellas.
You can find me at on Twitter at _Cody Stewart, and then obviously at the 4 Wide Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you follow the 4 Wide Podcast, and then obviously you can follow me at Michael Busch _. And the thing that I wanted to say before we went live was I absolutely love what Dirty Mo Media is doing. Obviously, they have Door Bumper Clear already and the Dale Jr. Download, but they've added 2 shows this year. One with Steve Letarte doing a fantasy like betting show, which I think is really, really cool for the sport of NASCAR. And then 2, Denny Hamlin now has his own show, which I absolutely love because I love these drivers being able to get their opinions without a microphone in their face right after the race. Like, he touched on the two-face comment between Joey Logano and Kyle Busch. Like, I love hearing other drivers comment on stuff like that. And I just love overall what Dirty Mo Media is doing, man. And it's super exciting. I've definitely consumed myself with some NASCAR podcast here heavily recently.
Awesome stuff, man. Ryan, what do you got going on?
Yeah, I just quickly, I agree. I love Denny Hamlin. I love the Denny Hamlin Unfiltered that we've seen on Twitter the last few years, and now on this podcast. It's really refreshing to see some of the corporate speak fall to the wayside. So that's really a big bonus for the sport. For me, you can find me on Twitter at YachtRacing45. Find us on Instagram. We have a Trophy Hunters podcast Instagram account that we will be sharing information on not only at Twitter but on Instagram. Obviously, the Trophy Hunters podcast, you can find us right here on YouTube. And then just again, a quick shout out to our Facebook pages, Kaulig Nation, Dinger Nation, and now new to the stable, the Chandler Racing Fans. So really exciting opportunities coming into this year, and you can find me everywhere on all of those different platforms.
Chandler Smith, Daytona 500 winner. You heard it here first. No, yeah, he has to worry about making the race. So, anyways, check us out, Phantom Empire, a bunch of stuff going on, and the Legacy of Westeros that launches next week. Zach and I have put a lot of work into that, so I hope people enjoy what we put out next week. So, fellas, thanks for doing this. Daytona 500 Sunday, fantasy pools, I guess, begin Sunday. Driver lock-in is tomorrow. Exciting times.
Let's go.
Let's hope someone's picks all don't get knocked out in the big one 3 laps into the race. Good night, everybody.
All right, y'all.
All right. Bye, guys.